simply out to win the adjudication and then my job is over. My concern is a little bit more long-term, so I'm talking about reunification of a family for the long term. Because I can win an adjudication just out of will and legal skill, but a lot of times that would put a family right back in the same situation 2 weeks later. So my job involves a lot of client counseling. So if I notice that something's kind of gone wrong in this family and there's a real concern, I'm also gonna have a very serious talk with my client about it. Because again, if there's one thing more traumatic than the removal of a child to foster care, it's the removal of a child to foster care.
Thanks. Any other questions from the audience? Well, this says one, yes?
I guess I have a follow-up question to what Diane was saying. Since you don't have an obligation to report, so how do you kind of work with defects so you're not reunifying the child and putting them in that bad situation?
How do you work with defects to make sure you're not putting the child back in a bad situation?
Again, okay, so we've moved beyond the point of the adjudication. Let's assume we've had the adjudication. Judge Boyd has ordered that the child needs to stay in foster care. So at that point, my client is given a reunification case plan. So the hearing that follows the adjudication is the disposition. And at that hearing, that's when defects is presenting a case plan, and they're saying, based on what Judge Boyd said were the causes of dependency, here are the 5 steps that we need the family to take in order to remedy those problems. Now, at that disposition hearing, I'm advocating for my client and saying, hey, I know there was a black eye, but we already ruled that out because it was a car accident, so let's not waste anyone's time by ordering anger management. So I'm trying to manage that case plan to make sure that it is exactly what my client needs to fix the problems in the family and not overload her to the point that she's going to lose her job because she's going to all of these services and appointments. Did I answer the question?
Kind of, yes.
I think it's also important to keep in mind that in Georgia, a child's going to have an attorney, and there'll be a guardian ad litem on that child. Mr. Singleton's back there. He serves as guardian ad litem in our court a great deal, and those are trained folks. So she's going to be talking with them as well, and the interests of that child are going to be presented in between the tug and pull that may sometimes happen between defects and the parent.
And I'll add that once we've all duked it out at the adjudication, and Ashley and I are friends again, in 99% of the cases, at this point, the defects attorney, the child attorney, and me are all working toward the same thing, which is the reunification of the family. Now, we may have different opinions about how soon that's going to be safe, but at that point, we're all working toward the same goal. So it actually works pretty well after we've all fought it out at the trial.
If I could just add, I think it's fairly black and white as a lawyer. You have your court order, it's very clear what the judge has ordered. Your clients need to do it, and so it's easier in some respects, I think, than the social work aspect that is not my forte. Because it's easy for us to know what her client has to do and my client has to do. The rest of it gets a little murky.
Any other questions? Well, this is, yes ma'am, in the back. You got it in under the wire.
I'll throw another one out. In that very first case, I can't figure out why no one did a forensic interview of that child at an advocacy center, or even the interviewers at Children's Healthcare of Atlanta. Why did they not do an FI of that child separate from his dad to find out exactly what was going on?
And I think I mentioned I would have advised my client to make sure one was done. I mean, if they didn't, but I think they would have. Typically, defects will say to me in my past experience as a SAG, hey, we're getting a forensic done.
And that may not have been the panel's fault. That may have been the fault of this person who set up the scenario.
That's okay, we'll teach you.
Okay, I'm working on it.
I was going to say that in that first scenario at Lizard Lick Children's Hospital, at Lizard Lick, we probably would have, attempted to speak to the child at the hospital. Again, you would not want to be trying to do a forensic interview in the emergency department. You're going to try to ask very open-ended and brief questions like, I see your arms hurt, what happened, and leave it at that. Not, did your daddy hurt you, did your daddy beat you up, nothing like that. But then, once investigators are involved, which would have happened at the hospital, so we would have called defects. We probably, if we didn't know that the school had made a report, we would have called and made another report, and sometimes we'll call and defects will say, oh, we already got another report. Well, the kid's here at the hospital now, so we need defects to respond here to the hospital, because if we really have a concern for abuse, we're not gonna just discharge him home with dad, and we're concerned. But then on top of that, depending on what investigators are involved, then the investigators can make the referral for the forensic interview at that point.
Yes, ma'am.
I was wondering if, in the first scenario, if the father took the children and moved to another county, and he already had previous experience with defects, wouldn't that have been a red flag that he was leaving to keep from being investigated further? And so
In the first scenario, if the daddy had had prior experience with defects and had taken off with the children to another county, wouldn't that have been a red flag?
Yes, it can, it definitely can be looked at as a red flag, but oftentimes when parents decide to leave, we know nothing about it. You may have a scheduled visit or an unscheduled visit and you go out and they're gone. And as Richard indicated, unless we are able to locate them, there's really nothing outside of a court order, and even then, parents will still leave.
did somebody find him? Wasn't he found?
Well, Richard went back and forth with that, so I
No, he wasn't.
I don't know.
I was trying to play it out so to see how it would go, right?
Oh, okay.
And in the scenario we ended up, he was
Well, what
not
if they
found.
found him? I mean, what if they eventually found him? What
Yeah,
happens?
if they found them and we got another intake on that family, it would show up in our system that we have this history on this family, and this is where we left off, and this is what's going on.
I'm sorry, what system are you talking about? If he moved to another county?
Within our database, within defects.
Okay, but does it carry over to another city or?
Does it
county?
carry over to
It's
another
a
state?
statewide
That's the
database.
question.
It's a statewide
Yeah.
database.
And we also have access to other states' databases as well.
What would you do at that point?
We would,
You knew where he was.
in that particular scenario, we'd open an immediate investigation and get somebody out there, and probably with the police and probably with somebody from the court to figure out what's going on.
But would you leave him there, or leave him there, or bring him back here? How does that work?
Oh, no, we never try to bring the person back to Frog County, but as Judge Boyd indicated, he would still have an open case, and so he could make a decision to bring dad back to court in Frog County, or he could go to court in the new county, I can't remember the
But
name
would
of
you
it.
all follow up on that?
Yes,
Follow up?
we would have contact with the DFACS in that particular county that he moved to. And even as Judge Boyd said, if the parent moved to another state and a situation occurred, we still have interstate correspondence with the other state.
Yeah, because a lot of parents move county to county to county, so you can't catch them.
Can I just say as a separate note, Richard, and then I'll be quiet. OC has been involved in terms of, yes, it should be a red flag, right? If parents skip counties when there's history or allegations, it should probably be a red flag. DFAC's local offices all communicate via one another through centralized intake and state DFACs. So there is a structure so that DFACs knows if there's previous history that's happened. So that's the good news, there's a system in place. But I think recently, from my perspective, there's been a real focus on, yeah, that should be a red flag. It should be a factor considered, and I think centralized intake is doing that.
On that note, I'm going to thank this amazing panel. If nothing else comes out of today, it's the point that these decisions really, really matter, and even well-intentioned people doing their best sometimes make decisions that don't always lead to the best outcome. And while thousands of these cases are handled every year, there's no room for error when it comes to the life of a child. I'd like to thank some folks who made this session work so very well. Michelle Barkley, the Assistant Director of the Committee on Justice for Children of the Supreme Court of Georgia, Melissa Carter, the Executive Director of the Barton Law Center at Emory University, and thanks to Faye First and the State Bar of Georgia for hosting the discussion today here. So good afternoon, everybody. Thank you.